Hola, en este video les voy a explicar los pronombres y los adjetivos relativos en español. We're going to record this video in English to make sure that I can answer all of your questions clearly and completely. First of all, we're going to talk about what are relative pronouns. They are pronouns like these ones that you see underlined here that help us connect a noun, like a person, place, or thing in the first part of our sentence. We'll call that our antecedent. We use these words to connect that antecedent to a description, something that identifies more information about that antecedent. So you'll usually see in these sentence structures a noun of some sort, a relative pronoun, and then a phrase that describes that relative pronoun. Some different things that these can mean. If we have something like el perro que adopté ayer es hermoso, it can mean the dog that I adopted yesterday is beautiful. That's one option. It can mean that. Or if we look at this example, busco un novio que sea guapo, I'm looking for a boyfriend who is handsome. You can also mean, in this case, mi amiga, quien es muy leal, me apoya mucho. My friend who is loyal, supports me a lot. You can use it as who in this context as well. Tengo un perro a quien le gusta ver Netflix. We can say something like, I have a dog to whom watching Netflix is pleasing. Be careful with this with verbs like gustar. Or in this case, la casa en la que vivo es muy pequeña. The house in which I live is very small. Hablé con la maestra, la que me ayudó ayer. I talked to the teacher, the one that, or the one who helped me yesterday. Or in this situation, Luisa, cuyo novio es muy arrogante, merece algo mejor. Cuyo is an adjective that means whose. So we're saying Luisa, whose boyfriend is very arrogant, deserves something better. Okay. Quick review, see if you can answer these two questions. What are the functions of relative pronouns in a sentence? Could you describe the formula of that sentence a little bit? And what are some possible definitions of these relative pronouns in English? Pause the video, take a moment to think, and come back. Let's see how you did. So like I explained earlier, you'll usually have some kind of noun, person, place, or thing, and then you'll see a relative pronoun that connects it to a description of it that comes later. So these are, in general, descriptive sentences. And a few things that they can mean who, that, for whom, in which. They can also mean the ones that, or who to give extra information between commas, or which to give extra information between commas, etc. Let's start with our first relative pronoun, K. K has a few different definitions in English. Sometimes it means who, sometimes it means that, and sometimes it means which if you're giving extra information between commas, like in a non-restrictive clause. The biggest thing with K that we need to remember is that we can never skip the word that like we do in English. So in Spanish, if you're thinking in your head, the project we finished yesterday was kind of hard, before you say this in Spanish, remember that you have to incorporate the word that here before you start explaining the project. The project that we finished yesterday was kind of hard. Like, look at this sentence. The pasta we ate yesterday smelled bad. How would I have to say this sentence in Spanish? Since I have to say the pasta that we ate, it would be la pasta que comimos ayer olía mal o olía feo. So just remember that that will be one really important thing. Okay, so now we're going to go through example sentences that show the different definitions of the word K. For example, la película que vimos ayer me hizo llorar. The movie that we saw yesterday made me cry. Busco un novio que no sea celoso. I'm looking for a boyfriend who is not jealous. La cita se canceló por la tormenta, que era muy peligrosa. The date was canceled because of the storm, which was very dangerous. So notice that K can mean that, who, or which, and in every single one of these sentence structures, we have some kind of antecedent or noun that we're describing towards the beginning of our sentence. Then we use a relative pronoun, and then there's some kind of phrase that describes that antecedent later on. Please be careful with prepositions. We're going to talk a lot about prepositions in these next three relative pronouns. Just remember that some common prepositions in Spanish are de, en, con, para, por, sobre, etc. And also that we have a lot of phrasal verbs or verbs that are going to use prepositions after them commonly. So like if you say hablar de, to talk about, salir con, to go out with, enamorarse de, to fall in love with, estar en, to be in a place, trabajar en, to work at a place, trabajar para, to work for a company, trabajar con, to work with someone, estar harto de, to be sick of something or someone, llevarse bien or llevarse mal, like to get along with someone, casarse con, to get married to someone. And also that when we use personal a, like the personal a is also considered a preposition. Be especially careful with some of these phrases where the preposition that we use in Spanish doesn't match up with what you would normally say in English. For example, enamorarse de, instead of using con, because you might be thinking to fall in love with someone, we use the word de in Spanish. So be careful with some of those phrases. So our next relative pronoun is quien or quienes. You'll use quien when referring to a singular person and quienes when referring to multiple people. And it has a few different uses. You can use it after a preposition to mean whom, or you can use it in a non-restrictive clause to give extra information about a person, like when it's in between two commas, and then it will mean who. And just remember that since it is quien or quienes, we can only use that with people. Let's look at a few different ways we could use it. This first sentence, I'm giving extra information about someone. So I'll say, la chica, quien es tímida, no habla con el chico. The girl who is shy does not talk with the boy. In the second sentence, I'm using it after a preposition to say whom. So, el chico de quien te estaba hablando me habló ayer. The boy about whom I was talking to you called me yesterday. And in this next one, I'm using it after a personal a, which is also a preposition. Mis abuelos, a quienes yo adoro, llevan 60 años de casados. My grandparents, whom I adore, but since I adore them, I use a personal a there, have been married for 60 years. Take a moment to pause the video and do a quick comparison. When would we use que versus quienes in our different sentences? Pause the video and come back. Okay, so these should be some of the ideas you came up with. Both of these can be used to say who. However, que can mean who or that or which if you're giving extra information about something. Quien can mean who or whom. Que is normally going to be used in simpler sentence structures where you have like your antecedent and then the word que and then the description right afterwards. Whereas you can only use quien or quienes after a preposition or to give extra information when you put that extra information between commas, those non-restrictive clauses. And obviously you can use que with people or things, but quien or quienes can only refer to people. Our third type of relative pronoun has a few different forms depending on the number and gender of the thing that you're referring back to. But we can use el que, la que, los que, and las que to say which or whom when we use them after a preposition. So this is what you'll use in sentences when you're trying to say like to whom or in which, that sort of thing, to refer back and add more information about something. We also use these phrases to say the one that or the ones that when we add extra information on at the end of our sentence. So here's some examples of what they mean with a preposition to say whom. Las amigas con las que salí son muy divertidas. The friends with whom I went out are very fun. Or el chico del que estoy enamorada está ahí. The boy with whom I am in love is over there. Just remember too that if originally I was going to say they el que, I have to combine de and el together into del. The same thing will happen if you end up with a el que. Make sure you combine into al que, please. These are some examples of how to say preposition and then use this phrase to say in which, for which, with which, etc. El restaurante en el que estamos es muy elegante. The restaurant in which we are located is very elegant. La tienda en la que trabajo está cerca de aquí. The store in which I work is close by. Or las plumas con las que escribo son mis favoritas. The pens with which I write are my favorites. You'll notice that just in this particular situation, when I'm using these LK type expressions after a preposition and it's referring to some kind of thing, not a person. When you're referring back to a thing, you can leave out the article if you want. You can skip the L, the la, the los, or the las in these types of sentences. Again, only if you're referring back to an object. Another way we use these is to say the one that to add on some extra information at the end of our sentence. So, vi una película en mis citas ciegas, la que protagoniza Sandra Bullock. I saw a movie on my blind date, the one that stars Sandra Bullock. So if I'm worried I haven't explained the movie enough, I add on a little bit of extra description at the end using one of these phrases. Or you can say, enseño a los estudiantes en Oshkosh, los que toman clases de español. Again, if I want to add on a little bit of extra information about those students at the end, comma, los que. Okay, so those are my uses of the LK expressions. Now, these ones are very similar. El cual, la cual, los cuales, las cuales mean the exact same thing as el que, la que, los que, las que. They still mean which or whom when we use them after prepositions, and we still use them to add on extra information to say the one that or the ones that. The only differences are these are a little bit more formal, and we don't have the option to skip the articles. Okay, let's do a quick comparison of the two different forms. Again, el que, la que, those forms mean the same thing as el cual, los cuales, etc. The only difference is their formal tone. So, las amigas con las que salí son muy divertidas has the same definition as las amigas con las cuales salí son muy divertidas. They mean the exact same thing. You would just use the cuales options in more formal writing or speaking. So if we want to compare these two, just pause your video and take a moment to think, how are they similar? How are they different? Okay, so remember that they mean the exact same thing. They're used in the exact same situations. We use them after prepositions. They mean who or which, or whom or which. And we can also use them to add on information to say the one that or the ones that at the end of a sentence. The only differences are that these ones are less formal, these ones are more formal. And also with the LK expressions, you can skip that article. Remember when we had the article in parentheses? You can skip the article if you're referring to things, not people. However, with this more formal version with qual, you can never skip the article. Just try to remember it's more formal, so you can't take any shortcuts. Okay, for our last piece, this tends to be a little bit easier for students. It doesn't have so many rules. Our last relative adjective, this one's an adjective, not a pronoun, is cuyo, and it has singular and plural masculine and feminine forms, cuyo, cuya, cuyos, cuyas, and we use this adjective to say whose, like to add on information about someone's possession or a person they have a relationship with. So if I say something like, hablo mucho con Josefina, cuyos padres son del Perú, it just means I talk a lot with Josefina, whose parents are from Peru. Now, notice though that this adjective is not used as a question word. If you want to say something like, whose clothes are these? You would use the interrogative word, the question word, de quién es or de quiénes son, things like that. Let's look at a few more examples so we can see how these work more specifically. An important piece to know is that you're going to match up number and gender of cuyo with the word that comes after it. So if we're looking at Mariana, whose boyfriend is over there, is very jealous, we would say Mariana, cuyo novio está por ahí, tiene muchos celos. Cuyo matches novio, not Mariana. Okay. I'm going to break up with Jorge, whose jokes are not funny. Voy a romper con Jorge, cuyos chistes no son chistosos. Again, this matches up with chistes. I met Ariana, whose sister is studying in Argentina. Conocí a Ariana, cuya hermana, again, these two have to match up, está estudiando en Argentina. Marco, whose Instagram photos are beautiful, is my idol. Marco, cuyas fotos is plural feminine, so we have plural feminine, etc. And just remember, you would not use this in a question, like saying, whose wedding is this? You would use de quién es esta boda, or something like that. Quick review. Cuyo es un pronombre, adjetivo o verbo y su número y género depende de la persona a quien mencionamos al principio, el antecedente, o depende de la palabra que viene después de cuyo. ¿Ok? Es un adjetivo y su número y género depende de la palabra que viene después, right? It's an adjective, match up number and gender with the word that comes after it. Okay, a few quick review topics. Remember that you have three different ways to say preposition whom, to say to whom, for whom, etc., by whom. You can use quien in that situation, el que expressions in that situation, or el cual expressions to do that. Okay, so you have lots of different possible options. Any of them are equally correct. Also, to say preposition with which when you're talking about objects, okay? Preposition which, like in which, at which. You can't use quien or quienes, because you're not talking about people, but you can use el que expressions and el cual expressions after that. If you want to give extra information about a person, like where we're doing a non-restrictive clause or giving information in between commas, you can use who for that situation, okay? So we would use quien or quienes to give extra information about people in between commas. Likewise, if you want to give extra information about an object, right, not a person, you can use que. Que can be used as which to give extra information in between commas for a non-restrictive clause. And also remember that to say the ones that, you could use either el que expressions or el cual expressions. Both could be used. Both are equally correct for that. Okay, so that's our quick review here. Please remember to check in with your teacher if you still have questions, and good luck.